Did my mistake of choosing the wrong shipping method for this order affect the condition of these comics? Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order that I placed with Mile High Comics during their 70% off coupon period around September 2024. I placed a number of orders trying to maximize that 70% off discount, the largest that I'd ever seen at Mile High Comics. I believe that maybe once we get into the holiday shopping season, there could be an opportunity for that coupon to return, maybe for a week or a short period of time. And so I will be paying attention to their website and newsletters to make sure that if they do return that 70% off discount, that I will consider placing another order at that time. I'd placed several orders while the last 70% off discount was in effect, and I haven't placed an order since because I'm still going through those orders, and this is one of those orders that I want to get to. And most of the orders that I placed to get the 70% off discount, they were pretty straightforward, typical of orders that I would place. But this one is a little bit different, and I am not excited. I am genuinely curious. Although I'm excited to acquire the books, I prefer to get books in as high grade possible, and so that's part of my excitement, is to see kind of what is the actual condition of the comics that I end up assigning after grading the books myself. I get excited trying to figure out what is that final condition assessment that I give to the books. In this case, it's a little different because I typically purchase only books that are flagged as near mint from Mile High Comics. And this was a set of 5 books that I bought that were listed as very fine. I have different reports and things that I've generated over the years, and I do have one that looks at books in fine condition and very fine condition. Mile High only has 5 or 6 different categories of condition, and then they kind of group the grade points into a range within those conditions. So a very fine is probably somewhere 6.5, 7.0, up through 8.5, because their near mint range goes 8.5 to 10. So this is a little bit of a smaller range, thinking about 2 grade points, maybe 3 at most, whereas an 8.5 to a 10, you're dealing with multiple grade points. So it's a little bit more specific, and I remember placing an order like this in the past, and I think the general feeling that I had was, I don't want to do this too often. I want to stick to the books they list in near mint because I felt like they were almost overgrading for very fine. Now, over the years, Chuck and the PR marketing department over at Mile High Comics, they would often talk about taking books in higher grade and putting them down in lesser grades on their website. I don't know if it was to make it seem like you were winning a contest or finding the hidden gem, the near mint copy in the very good bin. I don't quite understand that. As organized as they are, it doesn't make sense to me why they would go through the process of grading books and then put near mint copies down at the fine, very fine, or just anything below near mint. I don't subscribe to the idea that I should order comics in a lesser grade because I might end up with a near mint for really cheap. It is what it is. I think that we're dealing with a general range. But the question I always have is, do they overgrade their books? And a lot of folks would say, yes, they do. I think it's just inconsistent, as even professional graders are inconsistent. It really just kind of falls in line with everybody else, not precisely keeping to a grading standard. So I want to unbox this, show you the 5 books that I bought from Mile High while they had the 70% discount live. And these were all purchased in very fine condition. I had one other piece of criteria, and that is I wanted to order Silver Age comics. So all 5 of these books are from the mid to late 1960s. And while I have a number of Silver Age comics in my collection, I don't often acquire a lot of Silver Age comics. A lot of, I would say, for a good period of time, I was buying my Silver Age comics off of Heritage auctions, and I was targeting books around the 6.0 range, getting them raw, because I felt that Heritage undergraded a little bit like Infinity Comics, where I was finding maybe a 6.0 of a lot of Fantastic Four books, all Silver Age. And when I got them back, I had graded them myself and assessed them around a 7, 7.5. And the trouble there is there's so much activity on Heritage, and there's so much data as far as like comparing what the book should end up at and fair market values. And it just seemed like when I was analyzing Heritage auctions that just very coincidentally or oddly, the books were always ending up around fair market value. So I was paying FMV for a 6.0 and not really getting any deal, but really thought that I was buying a 6.0 and maybe getting a grade or two out of it, particularly if I sent it in for cleaning and pressing, of course, as well. But if I am in the market for Silver Age books, this is one way to acquire them. It's to maybe lower your expectations, lower your standards a little bit, look at the fine, very fine condition range, and consider picking them up from Mile High Comics. But that's kind of on paper or digital paper through their website. Let's actually look at these comics, look at the condition of the books, and see if that very fine range really holds up. And you'll see here in a moment the big mistake I made, and I don't know if I can say that I always do something anymore because I actually forgot this time. And I'll show you what I mean when I unbox this order of comic books that I ordered from Mile High Comics. Yes, that's right. Here is the shipment that I received from Mile High Comics, sent USPS ground. I like to always say that I always choose FedEx when I'm ordering from Mile High Comics, but in either a rush or something during the checkout process, I did not specifically select FedEx. It defaults to USPS, and here it is. This shipment required signature, so there was a little bit of weirdness where I missed the delivery and they wanted to keep it at the post office. Eventually, I had to request a redelivery. So this actually took a little bit of time from the time that I placed the order where I had actually received it. So I had placed this order at the end of September 2024. It's actually postmarked October 16th. And then it was really like an additional week and a half before I actually was able to have this order in my possession. So a lot longer than I would typically wait for. But I do think the main reason was because they were so overwhelmed with orders while that 70% off discount code was active. And so I do think it's just coincidence that I actually forgot to pick FedEx. But typically, door to door, I get my orders in under a couple of weeks, maybe a week and a half. By the time I place the order, normally choose FedEx, and it is expedited and sent my way. So this was sent ground advantage, took a little bit longer, but a little bit of different packing here for USPS. But I'm going to go ahead and open this up and show you the comics that I picked up. Okay, more or less the same experience, a little extra scotch tape, but for the most part, the books arrived safely. They know what they're doing. They know how to pack comics. And let's jump into this order of 5 Silver Age comic books that I ordered from Mile High Comics. And the first one that I picked up is Green Lantern number 41. This is from 1965. And this is the oldest book in the order, 12-cent cover. Gil Kane with the cover art for this issue, and this is the third appearance of Star Sapphire. So if you're a big collector of third appearances, this is probably on your list. But this was listed in very fine condition. And what I'd like to do is open these up and go ahead and grade them, because I think that's part of this interest that I have, is figuring out just what condition exactly is very fine. I think I've determined what near mint is, but in terms of a very fine copy, what is the specific grade point roughly? And looking at the book, the spine definitely has some color breaking ticks, several other non-color breaking ticks, particularly down here on this edge of the book. They're pretty small, hard to see right here in the red. Hopefully you can pick up a few. You can see where the creasing is headed towards the spine. some of those break color. Now, they're not bad. The cover itself is definitely wrinkled. There's actually a crease line that goes through the green in the trade dress here. It's not too bad, but just a lot of different cover issues here. Already, to me, it doesn't feel like this is an 8.0. This feels more like around a 7. And just turning it over to look at the back of the book, it has some markings here on the bottom. I believe those could be potentially dry cleaned. Some staining or discoloration down here towards the bottom. It definitely needs some sort of clean, dry clean or otherwise. The back cover looks okay. I would say in general it's just a little dirty, but color-wise, the color still presents very well. And then just looking at the pages, page quality, pretty good. Probably off-white to white. This might get a white pages designation. It looks pretty good. So structurally, a really nice book. If I'm to think about what type of grade I'm going to give it, I kind of just ballparked a 7.0. Maybe that was a little too harsh. Maybe a 7.5, but to be on the safe side, if I were to sit here and count all the ticks, I'd probably at least a dozen, if not 15 spine ticks, the creasing. And then what I end up doing is if I see a book that would benefit from a cleaning, I downgrade it again. So if it's like borderline 7.5, I would just downgrade this one into a 7. I don't believe that we're getting into fine or fine plus territory with this. I do think it's probably a really nice solid 7.0 for this issue of Green Lantern. And so that's what I'll keep it at as far as my assessment goes, where I catalog the book. I'm going to mark it as a 7.0 that is a candidate for cleaning and pressing. All right, so I just mark on the back of the backing board. In this case, I'm going to be using a full back. I typically put all of my Silver Age comics in a full back. Anything really that is a mid-grade and certainly above, to me it's worth an extra like 50 cents to help protect a book of this age. All right, there we go. Looks so much better whenever I reback and board these from Mile High Comics or really anywhere. But there it is, Green Lantern number 41 from 1965. I gave it a 7.0. And so again, very fine. Well, not exactly, at least by definition. According to Mile High standards, it's probably right within their range. But for me, it fell a little bit short. But part of the decision to purchase these comics were certainly, I think, the experimentation factor. Yes, it gives me an opportunity to buy Silver Age books for a lot less than what they would go for in near mint condition. And that's true with Mile High Comics. Certainly as the condition range decreases, so does the price. And when I use that report of looking at very fine books, I do the same thing that I do with near mint. I use the relative fair market value to determine whether or not it would be worth it. And so what I did is I sorted the report and said, show me the books that are on Mile High Comics that I have found to be available in very fine condition, and sort them by essentially the most potential value add based on the available price. That's probably just a awkward, long-winded way of saying to buy something below fair market value, but I just don't think it's a good idea to go onto the website and find any Silver Age book, find a copy in very fine, and just buy that one. I think there's some additional analysis that has to go into making these decisions. The next one is Daredevil number 25. This is from 1966. This is the first appearance of Leapfrog, which before the She-Hulk series on Disney Plus, Leapfrog or some iteration of the character Leapfrog became a thing. And so this book was hot there back for a minute. And while, it's a first character appearance, yes, and kind of interesting there, I think more for like the Daredevil story and the Daredevil lore, this is the first time Mike Murdock is mentioned. It's the secret identity that Matt Murdock creates for himself. So he basically has this persona that he's the brother of Matt Murdock, and this is the first time that sort of character or mention of Mike Murdock occurs in a comic book. In terms of the condition, let's take a look. I can already see quite a bit of spine wear, which is it's more typical of a book in fine or fine plus condition, 6065. And so I'm a little hesitant here with this one. More creasing in general. So all of these books would benefit from a press of some kind. You can see just above Leapfrog these indentations here on the book. But in terms of the spine, you can see a number of color breaking ticks and just some general spine wear. And this is probably what I was saying earlier, is probably a good example of a book that like Heritage Auction would list as a 6.0 or a 6.5, and then you'd get it back in your possession and go, okay, it's probably a grade or two above the listed condition. This is not an 8.0. It does have a number of things going for it, really strong colors up here in the trade, a sharp edge along the top of the book, but corners not in the best of shape, rounded on all four, which, you know, you're going to see that in a book in very fine anyway. But this is really leaning towards the fine condition range for me. The back looks to be discolored in some way and definitely would need some sort of cleaning process. There's something here. I don't know if it's a minor stain or just a chip off of the paper here, but that would probably have to be dealt with. And the thing is, it's hard for me because this is a mid-grade copy, and so I'm going through and pointing out all of the defects, and I bought it knowing that it was not near mint and didn't have any chance at really a high-grade, professionally graded slab copy, even with the improvement. But like I said, I'm probably looking at this and settling in somewhere around like a 6.5. That's what this book feels like. It's what it looks like. And then just checking out the page quality. Page quality is pretty good. Enter the Leapfrog, Stanley and Gene Colan Epic Extravaganza. So 6.5 on this copy of Daredevil 25. And I can already kind of fast forward this to listen to my assessment where I'm like, yep, just stick to near mint. It's almost like not worth it, just because these books, while they were discounted, they still were not cheap. You know, I'm not getting these books for 20, 30 bucks each. They're quite expensive, even in very fine condition, because in near mint, they're so valuable. But I want to make sure that I'm getting them in that 7.5 or even 7 to 8.5 range. And so this one fell a little bit outside that, in my opinion, getting a 6.5. So I'm going to indicate it here, 6.5 clean and press for this copy of Daredevil 25. So there it is, rebagged and boarded using a fullback. Really nice. I don't want to say it presents well, like I'm trying to say that it's in a better condition than it is. But, you know, after rebagging and boarding it, if I were just to look at the front cover, I would say, yeah, probably a 7.5 is fair. But the back just has too many problems with it, and it's quite dirty and a little bit discolored. But there it is, a 6.5 clean and press for Daredevil number 25. Next up is Fantastic Four number 79. This is from 1968. Obviously, Jack Kirby, The Thing, This Monster Forever. I also like this one because it's a nice solid green color scheme, and then The Thing just pops. It just comes right out front and center on this one. So many Fantastic Four books of this era. It's just like one super key appearance, second appearance, cover appearance, just major Marvel Universe changing issue after issue. This is not one of those. This is considered a non-key. I love focusing on these because it's the same era. I like to find books around the keys, so to speak. And this is a book that I really just kind of fell in love with the cover here specifically and wanted to pick this up in very fine condition. Looking at the condition itself, top corner's not too bad. I would say starting off, just showing this part of the book, looks to be a nice high-grade copy. It is not. Lots and lots of spine ticks as we go down, several of them breaking color. We also have some staple or pressing indentation here, just some markings here on the front cover. That would have to be probably not just pressed, but buffed out. And then unfortunately, on the edges of the book, the bottom and the right, here's the one on the bottom, a color breaking, like if that's would you consider like a finger bend, that's a massive finger bend that also broke color, so that's unfortunate. This corner just has a slight color break from a dog ear there, and then this is probably the worst spot here on the inner edge right here. This also breaks color, some sort of finger bend that went into the pages. And then up here also would benefit from a press just to smooth out this corner. So there are pressable defects, yes, but trying to figure out what is the current grade and what's the max. The back of the book is filthy. This would take quite a bit of effort to get this cleaned up. Same thing along this edge here. Lots and lots of issues up and down this book. It does, from a presentation and color perspective, really pop both front and back. Has really striking colors, so it does have that going for it. And then also I just noticed as I went to open the book, there's this line here that not only creases the book but breaks color along the way. So this one's even worse. From a page perspective, the pages look really nice. I would actually argue that this could get white pages and not off-white or off-white to white. So that's good. And I'm going to get totally distracted by all this amazing Jack Kirby art. I need to think about a grade for this one. I certainly think that this is probably in worse shape than the Daredevil book in terms of condition, and that one I gave a 6.5. I hesitate to drop it below a 6. I think 6 is probably fair on this, and I think also in the back of my mind, I'm just trying to think of like, what kind of grade improvement would a clean and press actually give this? Not that much. It might push it up to a 7, possibly. I think it's definitely in that borderline 6.5, but the back of the book is so dirty. And again, I just kind of use that as part of my assessment to drop it down a whole grade point or half grade point, in this case, down to a 6. I'm going to leave this as a 6. I don't think it would really be anything less than that. When I start to give books 5 or 5.5s, top edge in particular usually has some color breaks, as does the bottom. This does, but not as bad as what I've seen in like a 5 or a 5.5. So I think it's a solid 6.0. This crease really bugs me right there with the color break across, because it's just nothing. It's a color break going across the front of the book. So that one's tough. But there are some positives with this one. Like I said, the vibrancy of the color, the top and bottom corner along the spine, and the spine is in much better shape than you would typically see for a book in like a fine minus condition. So I'm going to settle in at a 6.0 on Fantastic Four 79. All right, there it is, rebagged and boarded with that fullback, getting the 6.0 clean and press indicator. Disappointing. Feels like the books are getting worse and worse as I go through the order. And don't get me wrong, I love these books, love adding them to my collection, but looking at the price I paid, I would have much rather paid the listed price for them in fine condition instead of the very fine price. But let's move on. 2 books to go. This is Daredevil 38, transitioning from Fantastic Four. Not that Doctor Doom was in FF79, but here he is from the pages of Fantastic Four coming into Daredevil. This one always trips me up here. Gene Colan on cover art on this one in terms of Matt Murdock's eyes. Sometimes this entire circle, I think, is his eye, almost like a bug eye, and then he's got his eyes closed right here. Hopefully if you see that, then you can't unsee it. Like I always look at this entire area as his eye. I think it's because Doctor Doom's mouth kind of goes right horizontally across. So that's always kind of interesting to me, but these are his eyes down here. So if I do that, then it's obviously Daredevil, but these kind of like bug eyes, I don't know. This is considered a classic cover. I think it makes you look at it for sure. It's probably not my favorite cover of Daredevil or Doom, but I think it is interesting, the blending of the two characters into this cover art. I think I just need to maybe learn to appreciate it a little bit more, or maybe it'll grow on me. But I really hesitated. I remember when I saw this book and saw that it was available, I was like, do I like this cover? But let's take a look here at the condition. Again, what it has going for it, just like the other books, colors are super strong. So very little fading, if at all. Looks like it could have been printed today, but just a tremendous amount of color breaks and ticks. There in the light, you can see already when I see that, I scream to myself 6.5. Like that's just where everything goes, whether that's fair or not. The top edge of the book, it's holding together, but there is some wrinkling, potentially even creasing up here at the corner. A little bit better shape than the FF79. And then some creasing down here that would definitely need a press. All of these books would get pressed and cleaned if I were to send them in for grading. The bottom one doesn't have a finger bend and crease as bad as the FF book. So I think, just trying to remain consistent. If this is a 6 that had those issues, this is definitely in better shape. I think I'm trying to determine whether or not it should be a 6.5 or a 7. The back cover looks pretty good. There is a little bit of a stain right in here, but I mean, when we're talking about a 6.0 to a 7.0, I don't really think that's going to make much of a difference. The back cover actually is in really nice shape. Other than the stain, it is more or less clean. I wouldn't call it like bone white, but very white, very light, very little fading or bleeding or ink staining. A little bit of a crease issue there, but for the most part, it's not too bad. A little bit of kind of dirt or something else that would need some dry cleaning. Spine is pretty much intact. So from the back cover, I mean, if I just had a book like that, I'm probably thinking 9.2 to 9.6, somewhere in there, depending on the type of stain and whether that could be corrected potentially. But the front cover is pretty rough. I was thinking 6.5, but the back cover being in much better shape, I'm probably going to land on I almost said 7. I just don't think there's much of a cleaning job on this one. I think it's pretty good. The stain would have to be looked at, of course, but I'm torn on this one. I could really be convinced it's a 6.5. I could also be convinced that it is a 7. And I think just there aren't as many color breaks around the rest of the issue. The more I look at it, and this is what happens, the more I really inspect a book, I start getting, just really nitpicky. The edge is a little bit rougher than I thought. So I'll go 6.5. This is what happens. I'm like, I think this could be a grade up, and then I see something else wrong with it. So let's go 6.5 on Daredevil 38. And certainly if you disagree with the grades that I've assigned any of these books, or you want to do your own assessment, you're more than welcome to leave a comment and let me know what you thought. We'll have to look at the numbers here in the order summary just to see if any of my decision-making formulas come back and kick these out as books that would be worthy to press and submit to CGC. So we'll let kind of the data speak for itself. Certainly from a collector standpoint, I'd love to have all of these books graded, but not if they're all going to get 5, 5.5, 6.0 because of the money that I spent to get it. That's part of the formula, is to decide, do I want to put any more time, money, or resources into these specific copies? So we'll look at the data here momentarily. One book to go. So 6.5 is what I settled on here for this copy of Daredevil 38. But I did pick it up because of the appeal of the cover itself. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of this cover, but I do think it is I don't want to say recognizable. I think it's a book that you look at and you kind of don't know what to make of it. At least that's what happened to me when I first saw it, particularly with the Daredevil bug eyes there that I can't unsee at this point. My eyes always go to that. But I think that's what kind of adds to the interest of the book itself. And really, any Doom collector, Marvel fan, Silver Age Doom, for me, it's very hard to come by. So happy to add this to my collection here, Daredevil 38 from 1968. The last book was a continuation of a theme of books that I had won at auction from Infinity Comics, where I'd picked up a couple issues of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I came across this book on Mile High Comics and realized that they didn't have a near mint copy, but they had a very fine copy. And there are a handful of Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. book from the Silver Age where the cover art is done by Jim Steranko. And my goal is to collect all of the Steranko issues. And this is one that I was missing, and I was really pleased that they had it. And I just thought that, if it did come back around that VF, that 8.0, which my hopes are kind of low at this point because of what we just witnessed with the grades of the other books, but I did feel like for what they had it listed as, and for the collectability and popularity of the book, that I felt like it would be worthwhile to take a chance. So I'll show you the book, and it is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 7. Very popular, influenced, homaged, Salvador Dali inspired cover, where we have the floor melting, breaking away from Nick Fury, the clocks melting. I mean, just a tremendous piece of art here on a comic book. And just thinking about his pop art influences and everything that Steranko brought to the comic book medium, this was just a book that had to have it lined up against my other Steranko S.H.I.E.L.D. books. Now, again, listed in very fine condition. This too is from 1968, and let's see how it's holding up and whether or not it fell into that very fine range, or if it's going to drop below like all of the others. Now, looking at this one, at first I was like, well, I don't see any color breaks, so what's going on? And the reason is it's almost like a very, very tiny motorcycle ran across the front of the book, and you can kind of see in the light, it goes all the way across, and all of these tiny lines. There's a better shot. There we go. So all of these little lines that are going all across the book there. So something was just imprinted right on the front of the cover. Now, I've seen some really well-trained, professional, experienced pressers be able to get something like that out, but like some steel balls are involved when you get into a book like this with this condition and get involved in something like this. It looks to me like there is some potential staining or even water damage at the bottom that goes across. It's slight, but I have seen this with some books from Mile High Comics. It doesn't look too bad on the back, so it does have that going for it. I will say overall, the book probably has more potential than the other 4, so that's good. I do like that. It's a little bit discolored. Looking at the other book, this is definitely has some yellowing going on. But for the most part, I would say this is in better shape. It's just a matter of how much would you downgrade this book. If it didn't have this, then we're dealing with just the slight discoloration or damage to the front. And I want to turn it over and open it up just so we can see, is it on the other side? It could be just fading, the discoloration. I'm not exactly sure what that is at the bottom. If it's a stain, or if it's a fade, there's some sort of line there. I have books like that where it could be just foxing right on the front cover, although I don't see the spots. But some sort of like line or stain, and the book is probably in as good a shape as this is, and got like a 9.2. So it is possible to get books. And I'm not suggesting this is a 9.2. I think that with this stain, certainly this crease, I mean, like, I'm just thinking almost just running backwards, like just go from like 9.4, 9.2, 9, 8.5, 8, 7.5, not very scientific, but thinking about a 7.5 worth of damage across here. It might be too harsh, but along with the stain, 7.5 is kind of where I'm leaning for this one. It does have a little bit of a spine issue there, but if you take a look, the spine looks very much intact. So it's a presentable copy. I get that, but a lot of work would have to be done to get whatever that is out in the middle of the book. If I saw this at auction and I could see this creasing or imprinting that's going on, I would just skip it and move on and wait for a better copy. The top edge isn't bad. A little bit of chipping going on here in this blue from the trade dress, but it's really, really not bad. If that were not there, I would probably be giving it a 9 or an 8.5. This is probably pulling it down into a 7.5. Uh, Again, I want to say, well, I could meet in the middle and give it an 8.0. And I just don't think it's fair. I think that whatever that is, the grader would probably look at it pretty harshly. I'm going to decide 7.5 on this one. I think it's pretty fair. The book looks really, really good otherwise, so it's hard for me to really punish it that much. I don't think it deserves that type of lower grade, but I just, if you're looking at it and holding it in person like I am, you can just feel the texture of these imprints, and there's just, you just kind of hope that maybe a really, really good press in the hands of a skilled individual would be able to get that out. But what I want to do now is I want to show you the price for these books in very fine. I think that looking back at what I paid for each book, and certainly kind of the activities that I'm participating in on auction platforms, feels like probably be better off just waiting for these to roll around and get listed as, fine condition, and pay for them accordingly, and then be happily surprised if they come back as a 775, because I paid for relative fair market value of these books in fine condition and not very fine. There's no way that any of these, I think even after a clean and press, would get anywhere near an 8.0. Love the books. I think they're amazing. Happy to add them to my collection. But unfortunately, really limited with the potential or ceiling of these books. I think that to maximize the condition, they definitely need to be cleaned and pressed. But the maximum ceiling on these, really not more than a grade point or two above what I gave them. So that's just kind of the way it is. And just like my previous assessment when I tried this the last time, buying non-near mint from Mile High Comics, I still feel kind of the same way, which is like I'm probably better off spending my money on some near mint copies and taking a chance there. But let me show you what I paid for these books. We can wrap this up. I'll plug in the grades, show you the relative fair market values, and then also let's look at the CGC values of these books in the grades that I assigned, just to see if I could add any potential value if I were to send these books in for professional grading. Okay, here's the order summary for the order that I placed with Mile High Comics back on September 28th, 2024. I was invoiced $304.10 for these 5 comic books. I was able to unlock a 70% discount. And yeah, this is what scares people away, like that Green Lantern 41, $270. There's no way. Very fine book. You could argue that maybe that's too much for a near mint copy. But when you start to look at 70% off that price, then things start to maybe get within a range where you want to take a chance, which is exactly what happened to me. And let's start to look at the comparison against cover price. I'm going to show you the total cost door to door. What I end up doing is distributing any sort of taxes or fees. It's free shipping, so even though I chose the wrong shipping method, or wrong for me anyway, I did unlock free shipping. Free shipping unlocks it, I think it's $65 or more, so I definitely crossed over that threshold. And from a raw fair market value comparison, you can see the total cost here compared to the raw value, and it does appear that even though maybe the conditions actually fell short of my expectations, from a raw value add perspective, I was able to add $218.90. Now, this is for a book in any grade. So I typically do this comparison because I'm typically buying near mint copies. And so it's kind of okay to use the highest fair market value because for the most part, the higher fair market value is associated with that near mint grade in cover price. So let's look at the actual grades and plug those in instead so that we can look at, I would say, more accurate values here. So going through the books, we had Daredevil 25 at a 6.5, and you'll see the numbers change here as I plug them in. Daredevil 38, same grade, 6.5. Fantastic Four 79, 6.0. Oh, that really dropped the overall raw value add there. Green Lantern 41, that was a 7.0. The raw value continues to drop, and now I'm in the red. 7.5 for the Nick Fury Agent of shield, not a 7.6, but a 7.5. So those are the values. Got one positive value add, or pretty much a break even, a $5 value add for Nick Fury #7. So even in very fine condition, it didn't end up working out. Now, I just want to show you kind of like what I do with like a 9.4, 9.8 type of estimate. Like, what if all of these were 8s? You know, that very fine. Still not great, kind of a break even. The thought process is acquire them at a discount with the potential to increase their value if I were to help their condition, improve the condition by getting them cleaned and pressed. I remember this from last time, and it's not just like, well, obviously this isn't a good idea. For me, what I realized, in comparing like to my last video with how I approach buying comics at auction and looking at the scan, I really like to acquire books that don't have color breaks or minimize the number of color breaks. These in this very fine range, and I'm sure below that as well, tons of color breaks. So the books are kind of stuck in the condition. Like I said, if they all got one bump up from professional cleaning and pressing, okay, that's great. Like, is that Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? That one probably has the best chance at maybe getting up to, let's say, an 8.5. That discoloring at the bottom bothers me. 8.5, $55 investment on that one. It's $138 in an 8.5. How about a 9? Hopefully it goes up. And it didn't. 122. So you're playing with some numbers here in a range of like $125 to $135 in that 8.5 to 9.0. And for me, maybe that's a book that you actually consider trying to figure out, can I acquire this book for around $100? Do I make a $100 offer to somebody who has a 9.0? That actually doesn't sound too bad when you look at the amount of money that I spent on this order. And it's always kind of like the hindsight problem that I have when I do something like this. Like, I really spent $300 on these 5 books, but look at the CGC values. I could have just picked them up slabbed in these grades for this amount of money, and do I want them slabbed in a 6, 6.5? I don't know, maybe. It's kind of what, like I said, what I used to do with Heritage and buying these books raw. The difference is I would not be spending $61 for Daredevil 25 in a 6.5. It'd probably be half that, maybe even $40. So I'd be in for a lot less for it. So we'll have to see. Unfortunately, for the amount I paid, if I also slide this over to show the decision is based on the press status. So if there's really nothing to do with the book, the decision will either present itself to send the book in for pressing, or if there is no press status here in this column and it's worthy of grading, then the decision column pops in with submit to CGC just straight away. I don't see any of these books getting the press indicator. One did. So Green Lantern 41, it is saying that this one would be worthy at a 7.0 to go ahead and send in for cleaning and pressing to maybe get the bump there, because you could see if it does get one grade bump, it's 150, 211, and 219. So somewhere between like 150 to $200 if I were to send that book in for cleaning and pressing. I spent $83.20 on that book specifically. I mean, you could make the argument whether or not the third appearance of Star Sapphire is a key or not, but it's a book that does have some value and some significance. It's from 1965, one of the older books that I have in my collection. So I can see where that'd be valuable, but the most expensive book that I purchased certainly has some potential. But like I mentioned, all of these books, with just the number of color breaks that they have, really hard for me to justify a lot of time and investment in these. These are probably just going to my collection as is. I'll sort of take the loss, if you will, or it's not a loss. It's just the realization that I overpaid for these. I much prefer looking at these books at auction in this grade, understanding that not all books with defects are equal, and that, I think, is my big takeaway, is that you can arrive at a mid-grade copy, which also for me, by the way, is the hardest to grade. That's why I agonized over some of these grade points, because it's difficult for me to really look and hone in on a very specific grade. A lot of it is just experience and just kind of knowing when you pick the comic up and you hold it and you smell it and you look at it, it's just like, it just feels like a book in fine condition or very fine or less. And the nuances between like 5 and 7.5, it can kind of go either way. That's kind of messing with me too, because my ideal method of comic book acquisition is much more scientific, where this feels more like a guessing game, because one book has that ridiculous imprinted crease across the cover, very few spine ticks. The other book has a number of spine ticks, some break color, but the cover is more or less fine, and they're both around a 7.75. One book has way more potential than the other. One book, that crease may not come out, and then another book might have sharp corners all around, lots of color breaks. That too might be a 7.5, but it has less of a chance of any improvement because you cannot improve color breaking damage. So that's where a lot of it kind of weirds me out, because I don't feel comfortable collecting those books and considering grading those books unless I was able to acquire them cheaply, which is every comic book collector's dream, is to buy the best comics for the least amount of money. I totally understand that. And I think that that's part of what I need to just reconsider with Mile High Comics, is that part of the reason that the books are listed for a higher dollar amount is because that's how they operate their business. But what I found is that purchasing them in near mint is worth it because of how they grade near mint books. This is just adding to my data to inform me of how they grade books that are not near mint, where Mile High Comics, they're extremely lenient on the color breaks. I am not. And that's the biggest difference and my biggest takeaway. So we'll see. Maybe I will send this Green Lantern book in just so I feel like I could have some sort of win. It is somewhat stain-free and really strong colors, so it might be worth it to go ahead and send that one in and see if I could get that up into like an 8.85. We'll see. The rest of it will go right into my collection. Really awesome Silver Age books. I don't acquire a lot of Silver Age, so it is exciting to be able to add books from the 1960s into my collection. And those are always the ones I stop at when I go back to look through my bins. I always stop at the Silver Age just because I don't have that many, and they're a lot of fun to look at. So let me know what you think about the grades that I gave these books or this method. I think it's pretty evident. I'm going to stay away from any books that are not near mint from Mile High Comics, but would love to get your thoughts and your opinions or your feedback about how I grade or what grades I gave the books. Feel free to leave your comments on any of that. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.